The morning sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the mining colony as Captain Lee Hyun walked through the busy streets. The air smelled of fresh earth and metal from the excavation sites. Blue-skinned Altarians worked side by side with humans, their telepathic voices creating a gentle humming in the background. Children of both species played together in the central plaza, while their parents prepared for another day of work. Hyun adjusted his prosthetic arm as he checked his daily reports. The terraforming project was ahead of schedule. The atmospheric processors were running smoothly, and the soil analysis showed promising results for future farming. 3 years of joint cooperation had turned this barren rock into something that could support life for generations. Captain Hyun called Commander Park Ji-won as she jogged up to him. Her communication device beeped constantly with routine messages from various work teams. The morning briefing is ready. Dr. Kim wants to show us something interesting about the Altarian root systems. Hyun nodded and followed her toward the command center. The building stood at the heart of the colony, its blue and white walls decorated with artwork from both human and Altarian cultures. Inside, the main conference room buzzed with activity as engineers and scientists prepared their presentations. Dr. Kim Minho looked up from his research tablet as they entered. His eyes showed the excitement of someone who had just made an important discovery. "Captain, you need to see this. The Altarians have been growing these root networks that could revolutionize how we approach planetary cultivation. The telepathic connection they have with plant life is beyond anything we understood before." Yoon Sola, the head engineer, was bent over a holographic display showing the colony's power grid. Her tools were scattered across the table as she made adjustments to the defensive systems. "Everything looks good on my end," she said without looking up. "Shield generators are at full capacity and the early warning sensors are functioning perfectly." The meeting continued for an hour as each department head reported on their progress. The mining operations had discovered new mineral deposits that could fund expansion to other worlds. The medical bay had successfully treated several cases of cross-species illness using combined human and Altarian techniques. The agricultural domes were producing enough food to make the colony self-sufficient. Hyun felt proud of what they had accomplished together. The alliance between humans and Altarians had started as a simple trade agreement, but it had grown into something much deeper. Trust, friendship, and mutual respect had flourished in ways that surprised everyone involved. The first sign of trouble came at exactly 11:47 local time. Sola's communication device screamed with urgent alerts. Her fingers flew across the control panel as warning lights flashed red throughout the command center. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching the system. Multiple ships, unknown configuration." Ji-won immediately activated the long-range scanners. The main display filled with data as the computer tried to identify the incoming vessels. "Sir, these aren't any ships in our database. The energy readings are off the charts." Hyun moved to the tactical display and studied the approaching formations. 12 large ships moved in perfect attack formation toward their planet. Their design was angular and aggressive, built for war rather than exploration or trade. "How long until they reach orbit?" "At current speed, approximately 6 hours," Sola replied, her voice tight with concern. Dr. Kim looked up from his research with confusion. Who could they be? "We haven't had any contact with hostile species in this sector. The Altarians have been peaceful for generations." The answer came 30 minutes later when the ships entered communication range. The main screen filled with the image of a creature that made everyone in the room step back in shock. The being had gray, scaled skin and burning red eyes. Its mouth was filled with sharp teeth and its voice carried the sound of grinding metal. "Inhabitants of the third planet," the creature spoke in heavily accented but understandable human standard. "I am War Leader Groth of the Vorthan Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our domain. You have 72 standard hours to surrender unconditionally. Comply and you will be allowed to serve. Resist and you will be eliminated." The transmission cut to black, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Hyun was the first to recover. His military training kicked in as he began issuing orders. "Sola, get me a full analysis of their weapons capabilities. Ji-won, send immediate distress calls to all human Federation bases. Priority Alpha emergency codes." "Sir," Ji-won said as her fingers worked frantically over the communication controls. "The nearest Federation naval base is 15 light-years away. Even if they respond immediately, it would take weeks for help to arrive." "Send the calls anyway," Hyun ordered firmly. And contact the Altarian leadership. We need to coordinate our response. Sola's analysis results appeared on the main screen and the numbers were devastating. Captain, each of those ships carries enough firepower to level our entire colony. Our defensive systems might hold them off for a few hours at most. Dr. Kim stared at the tactical display in disbelief. But why us? We're just a mining and research colony. We don't have any strategic value. We have something they want, Hyun said grimly. Either our resources or our location. Maybe both. He turned to address the entire room. Everyone listen carefully. We're facing an enemy that vastly outguns us, but we're not helpless, and we're not giving up without a fight. Within hours, word of the threat had spread throughout the colony. Panic set in as families gathered their belongings and prepared for the worst. The Altarian leader, Veltar, called an emergency meeting with all human advisors. Captain Yun, she said, her telepathic voice carrying waves of fear and determination. My people trusted in the human alliance when we agreed to this joint colony. We believed that together we could build something beautiful and lasting. Now we face our darkest hour. Hyun looked around the room at the faces of both humans and Altarians. These people had become more than just colleagues or allies. They were family. Veltar, I made a promise when we established this colony. Humans don't abandon their friends. We'll stand with you whatever comes. As the Vorthan fleet drew closer, the colonists worked together to prepare for siege. They moved civilians into underground shelters, distributed emergency supplies, and tried to strengthen their meager defenses. Children were comforted by adults who hid their own fear behind forced smiles. The 72-hour countdown had begun, and hope seemed very far away. The first day passed like a nightmare that refused to end. Captain Lee Hyun stood in the command center watching the Vorthan ships position themselves around the planet. Their formation was perfect, designed to prevent any escape attempts. Every few hours they would fire a single shot at some non-essential building, just to remind everyone of their power. Commander Park Ji-won had been sending distress signals for 18 hours straight. Her eyes were red from staring at communication screens, searching for any response from human space. The automated replies kept coming back with the same cold message. All Federation naval forces were engaged in operations in distant sectors. No help was available, Captain, Ji-won said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. I've tried every emergency frequency we have. I even sent messages through old smuggler networks and independent trader routes. Nothing is coming through except automated responses. Hyun placed a hand on her shoulder. Keep trying. Someone has to hear us eventually. But privately he was beginning to accept the terrible truth. They were too far from the main shipping lanes and too remote from major Federation bases. Even if someone received their calls, no ship could reach them in time. Yoon Sola worked frantically to restore power to the colony's defensive systems. The Vorthans had targeted the main power plant with their first demonstration shot, cutting electricity to half the settlement. Emergency generators kept essential systems running, but the defensive shields were operating at only 30% capacity. I can reroute power from the mining equipment, Sola said as she crawled out from under a damaged control panel. Her clothes were covered in dust and her hands were cut from working with damaged cables. That might get us up to 40% shield strength. But Captain, even at full power, our defenses won't stop a concentrated attack. The evacuation of civilians continued throughout the second day. Underground bunkers that had been designed for mining accidents and equipment storage now housed thousands of frightened families. The tunnels echoed with the sound of crying children and worried conversations in both human and Altarian languages. Dr. Kim Min-ho spent his time in the bunkers, trying to keep spirits up while secretly documenting everything he could about Altarian culture. If the worst happened, he wanted some record of these people to survive. He interviewed elders about their history and helped children draw pictures of their homes and families. Doctor, said an elderly Altarian named Kethara as she watched her grandchildren play with human toys. Do you think your people will come for us? Kim looked into her ancient eyes and saw a lifetime of wisdom and hope. I believe they will try their hardest, he said honestly. But the galaxy is very big and we are very far from help. The old woman nodded slowly. Then we must be brave for as long as we can. On the surface, the Vorthan bombardment continued with calculated cruelty. They would target a water treatment plant in the morning, forcing repair crews to work in the open. Then they would destroy a communications relay in the afternoon, cutting off contact between different parts of the colony. Each attack was designed to cause maximum fear and disruption without completely destroying their future slaves. Captain Hyun organized defense teams from their remaining security personnel and volunteer colonists. They had exactly 47 weapons between them, mostly mining tools converted for combat and a few military sidearms carried by the human advisors. Against a fleet that could destroy cities, it seemed laughably inadequate. "We'll set up positions in the old mine shafts," Hyun explained to his makeshift army. "If they land ground forces, we can use the tunnels for guerrilla tactics. We won't be able to stop them, but we can make them pay for every meter." A young Altarian miner named Veltan stepped forward. "Captain, many of us know these tunnels better than anyone. We can guide your people through passages that don't show up on any maps." Hyun felt a surge of gratitude mixed with sadness. These people were offering to fight and die alongside humans they had known for only 3 years. "Thank you, Veltan. We're honored to stand with you." Commander Jiwon received a brief transmission on the second evening that sent a shock of hope through the command center. For 30 seconds, they heard a human voice breaking through the static. "This is Captain Song of the merchant vessel Far Wanderer. We received your distress call and are attempting to reach your position. Our estimated arrival time is transmission lost." Everyone in the room held their breath as Jiwon tried desperately to re-establish contact. But the signal was gone, lost in the void of space. "Could they help us?" asked Sola hopefully. Hyun shook his head sadly. "One merchant ship against a Vorthon battle fleet. They would be destroyed before they could even enter the system. I hope they have the sense to stay away." As the second day ended, the psychological warfare intensified. The Vorthons began broadcasting messages directly to the colony's communication systems. War Leader Groth appeared on every screen, his horrible voice echoing through the tunnels and bunkers. "People of the mining world," Groth said with obvious enjoyment, "your Federation has abandoned you. No ships come to your aid. No warriors rush to your defense. You are alone with your fear, exactly as we planned." Dr. Kim watched Altarian families huddled together around small cooking fires in the bunkers. Parents tried to shield their children from the broadcast, but the words carried clearly through the underground chambers. He saw hope dying in their eyes and felt something break inside his chest. The Vorthon leader continued his speech. "In 18 hours, our ground forces will begin landing operations. Those who surrender immediately will be processed for labor assignments. Those who resist will provide entertainment for our troops before they die." Commander Jiwon muted the transmission, but the damage was done. Despair settled over the colony like a heavy blanket. Some people began to openly discuss surrender. Others spoke of fighting to the last person. A few talked quietly about ending their own lives rather than facing Vorthon slavery. Veltar, the Altarian colonial leader, found Captain Hyun sitting alone in his quarters late that night. "Captain," she said, her telepathic voice barely a whisper, "my people are beginning to lose faith. They believed that humans would protect them, but no help comes." Hyun looked up at her with tired eyes. "Veltar, I wish I could promise you that rescue is coming, but I won't lie to you. We're on our own." "Then we will face whatever comes together," she replied with quiet dignity. "If these are to be our final hours, let us spend them as friends." Outside, the Vorthon ships moved closer to the planet, preparing for the final assault. Time was running out, and hope had never seemed so far away. The final day dawned gray and cold as storm clouds gathered over the colony. Captain Lee Hyun stood at his window, watching the Vorthon ships grow larger in the sky. They had moved closer during the night, close enough that he could see the weapon ports glowing with deadly energy. In 18 hours, those weapons would turn his home into burning rubble. He turned away from the window and walked to a secure storage locker hidden behind his desk. His authorization codes unlocked 3 levels of security before the heavy door swung open. Inside were weapons and equipment that officially did not exist. Military-grade pulse rifles, portable shield generators, and enough ammunition to outfit a small army. "Sola, Jiwon, Kim," he called over the communication system. "Report to my quarters immediately. Command-level clearance required." When his team assembled, Hyun showed them the hidden arsenal. Jiwon whistled softly as she picked up one of the pulse rifles.
"Sir, how long have these been here?"
"Since the colony was established," Hyun replied. "Standard procedure for remote settlements. We hoped we would never need them." He began distributing weapons and equipment. "These won't stop a fleet. but they will give us a chance to make the Vorthans pay for their victory. Dr. Kim held one of the rifles awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable with weapons. Captain, I'm a scientist, not a soldier. I'm not sure I can. You can and you will, Hyun said firmly but kindly. Everyone fights today. The Altarians are counting on us to show them how humans face impossible odds. Yoon Sola examined a portable shield generator with professional interest. I can integrate these with our existing defensive systems. It won't stop their main guns, but it might protect key positions from ground forces. The preparations continued throughout the morning as word spread about the hidden weapons. Colonists who had never held a gun practiced basic shooting techniques with makeshift targets. Altarian miners learned to operate human equipment, while humans practiced moving. Through the underground tunnels that would be their battleground, Commander Jiwon worked at her communication station with desperate intensity. She had been sending distress signals for over 60 hours, broadcasting on every frequency known to human space. Emergency channels, military networks, civilian bands, even old exploration routes that had been abandoned for decades. Captain, she said during a brief break, I've expanded the signal range to cover systems we've never contacted before. Maybe someone out there will hear us and at least carry word back to the Federation about what happened here. Keep broadcasting until the last possible moment, Hyun ordered. Even if no help comes, someone should know that we didn't surrender without a fight. In the underground bunkers, Dr. Kim worked with Altarian scholars to preserve their cultural records. They had connected every available storage device to create a master archive of their history, art, and scientific knowledge. Ancient songs were recorded alongside modern poetry. Traditional stories were saved next to cutting-edge research data. If we don't survive, Kim explained to an elderly Altarian historian named Mortek, at least future generations will know what your people accomplished. Your culture will not be forgotten. Mortek's telepathic voice carried deep sadness mixed with gratitude. Dr. Kim, you humans have shown us friendship beyond anything we expected. Even facing death, you think of preserving what we hold most dear. The children in the bunkers sensed the fear and tension of the adults around them. Human and Altarian parents worked together to keep them calm, organizing games and storytelling sessions. Captain Hyun visited the family shelters when he could, distributing candy from his personal supplies and teaching the children simple songs from Earth. Will the bad ships go away soon? Asked a small Altarian girl named Little Star, her large eyes reflecting innocent hope. Hyun knelt down to her level and spoke gently. We're working very hard to keep everyone safe, Little Star. The grown-ups are doing everything we can. Her human friend, 6-year-old Mia Chen, took Little Star's hand. Don't worry. My dad says humans never give up. Someone will come help us. The simple faith of the children made Hyun's chest tight with emotion. He wished he could promise them that help was coming, but honesty was all he had left to give. As the afternoon wore on, Yoon Sola managed a minor miracle with the colony's defensive systems. By stripping power from non-essential systems and rerouting energy through mining equipment, she brought the shields up to 60% capacity. The lone defensive battery was fully operational and loaded with their entire supply of heavy ammunition. It's not much, she reported to the command staff. But we can give them one good fight before the shields fail. The final preparations took on an almost ceremonial quality. Weapons were cleaned and checked one last time. Emergency medical stations were established in the strongest bunkers. Messages were recorded for families back on Earth and transmitted through Commander Jiwon's communication array. Captain Hyun found himself thinking about his sister back on Earth, about friends in the military who might never learn what happened here. He recorded a simple message, explaining the situation and expressing his pride in serving alongside both his human team and their Altarian allies. Veltar gathered her people in the main bunker as evening approached. Her telepathic voice reached everyone simultaneously, carrying strength and dignity despite their desperate situation. My people, she said, tomorrow we may face our final dawn, but we will face it as free beings who chose their own path. The humans have shown us what it means to stand together against impossible odds. Whatever comes, we will not shame their example. The Altarians began a traditional song of courage that had been sung before battles for thousands of years. Their voices harmonized in ways that human ears could barely comprehend, creating music that seemed to come from the very stones around them. Soon, human voices joined in, humming along with the alien melody. As the final hours ticked away, small groups gathered to share meals, tell stories, and say goodbye. Commander Jiwan continued her broadcasts into the void, her voice growing hoarse as she repeated the same desperate message over and over. This is Kepler 442b colony to any ship in range. We are under attack by hostile forces. 18 humans and 4,000 Altarian civilians are trapped here. If anyone receives this message, please tell our families that we did our duty. We stood together until the end. Captain Hyun made one final inspection of their defenses as the Vorthan ships began their final approach. The odds were hopeless, the outcome inevitable, but his people were ready. They would make their last stand with courage and honor. The countdown had reached its final hours, and hope seemed like a memory from another lifetime. The final hour arrived with the sound of thunder rolling across the sky. Captain Lee Hyun stood at the entrance to the main bunker, watching the Vorthan ships descend through the atmosphere like falling stars. Their hulls glowed red-hot from atmospheric entry, and their weapons charged with deadly light. "This is it," he said into his communication device. "All teams to battle stations. Remember, we're buying time for the civilians. Every minute we hold them off is another minute our people stay alive." Yoon Sola had positioned herself at the defensive battery control station, her hands steady on the targeting systems despite the impossible odds. "Sir, I have firing solutions on the lead ships. The battery has enough power for maybe 20 shots before the capacitors burn out. Make every shot count," Hyun replied. He turned to his strike team, a mix of human advisors and volunteer Altarian miners. "We go for the closest ship. If we can damage their landing craft, we might slow down their ground assault." Dr. Kim Minho had surprised everyone by volunteering for the strike team. His normally gentle hands now held a pulse rifle with determined grip. "Captain, I've studied their ship designs from the scanner data. The landing bays should be here and here," he said, pointing to locations on a hastily drawn diagram. The team moved out through the service tunnels, using routes that Altarian miners had carved over years of excavation. The passages were narrow and dark, lit only by emergency lighting that cast strange shadows on the stone walls. Above ground, the Vorthan assault began with devastating efficiency. Plasma bolts rained down from orbit, turning buildings into vapor and melting metal like candles. The colony's shields flickered and sparked as they absorbed hit after hit, their energy reserves draining rapidly. Commander Park Ji-won crouched in the communication bunker, still broadcasting distress signals even as the world exploded around her. Her equipment sparked and smoked from electromagnetic interference, but she kept working with stubborn determination. "Emergency transmission to any vessel in range," she repeated for the 1,000th time. "Kepler 442b colony under attack. Vorthan Empire forces beginning ground assault. Send word to the Federation. Tell them we fought with honor." The first Vorthan landing ships touched down in the colony's central plaza with earth-shaking impacts. Massive doors opened to reveal troops in powered armor, carrying weapons that hummed with alien energy. Their red eyes glowed behind helmets designed to inspire terror, and their movements showed the confidence of predators who had never faced real resistance. War Leader Groth's voice boomed across the settlement through external speakers. "Humans and slaves, your time of defiance is over. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. Continue to resist and we will make your suffering last for days." Captain Hyun's strike team reached their target position just as the landing ship's cargo bay opened. "Now," he whispered into his communicator, and the team opened fire with everything they had. Pulse rifle beams and improvised explosives struck the Vorthan ship's hull and landing gear. Sparks flew as armor plating buckled and systems overloaded. Two of the landing craft's engines exploded in brilliant flashes, sending the ship crashing sideways into a nearby building. "Direct hit," reported Dr. Kim with satisfaction. "That ship won't be carrying any more troops today, but their victory was short-lived." Return fire from other landing sites forced the strike team to retreat deeper into the tunnel system. Vorthan energy weapons turned stone to molten slag and filled the air with choking dust. Back at the defensive battery, Yoon Sola fired shot after shot at the descending ships. Her targeting was perfect, but the enemy vessels were heavily armored and her weapons barely scratched their hulls. Each shot drained more power from the failing shields protecting the bunkers below. "Captain," she reported over the radio, "shields are down to 15% and falling fast. I can maybe hold them for another 10 minutes. In the deep bunkers, Altarian families huddled together as the ceiling shook from explosions above. Dust fell like snow and the lights flickered with each impact. Children cried while adults tried to comfort them with stories and songs, their voices barely audible over the sounds of battle. Commander Jiwan's communication equipment suddenly came alive with static and interference patterns she had never seen before. At first she thought it was just damage from the bombardment, but then she noticed something strange. The interference had a pattern, almost like a signal trying to break through. "What the hell?" she muttered, adjusting her receivers to filter out the noise. For a moment, the static cleared and she heard something impossible. Engine signatures, but not Vorthan designs. These were different, older, but definitely artificial. She ran a quick analysis on her portable scanner and felt her heart skip a beat. The energy readings were faint but unmistakable. Somewhere in the outer system, something was moving, something that didn't match any known Vorthan ship design. "This can't be right," she whispered, checking her instruments again. The readings showed a massive energy signature emerging from behind the system's outermost moon. Whatever it was, it had been hiding in the dark zone where sensors couldn't detect it. Dr. Kim's voice crackled over the radio from the tunnel system. "Command, we're seeing some kind of sensor anomaly out here." The Vorthans seemed confused about something. "Their communications are going crazy." Captain Hyun, pinned down by enemy fire in a collapsed section of tunnel, managed to peek through a crack in the ceiling. High above, he could see Vorthan ships beginning to change their formations. Some were turning away from the planet, as if responding to a threat from space. "What are they doing?" asked Veltun, the young Altarian miner who had stayed with the strike team. "Why are they not focusing on us anymore?" Commander Jiwon's equipment suddenly burst into clear reception as the interference patterns resolved into something incredible. Ship transponder codes, human Federation signatures, and power readings that made her hands shake as she read them. "Captain," she broadcast on all frequencies, her voice filled with disbelief. "Captain, you need to hear this. I'm reading human ship signatures in the outer system. Multiple vessels, classification unknown, but definitely Federation technology." The fighting above ground seemed to pause as both sides tried to understand what was happening. Vorthan troops looked up at their ships with confusion, while human defenders dared to hope for the first time in days. In the deepest bunker, Veltar suddenly raised her head as her telepathic senses detected something new. "Something comes," she announced to her people. "Something approaches through the dark between worlds. I sense purpose, determination, and anger." Captain Hyun pressed himself against the tunnel wall as Vorthan energy beams swept overhead. But now their fire seemed less focused, more panicked. "Jiwan, what exactly are you reading out there?" "Sir." Her voice came back filled with wonder and hope. "I think our prayers have been answered. Someone is coming, and they're not here to negotiate." High above the planet, the darkness between the stars began to stir with new and terrible purpose. The darkness between the stars exploded into brilliant light as the human fleet dropped their stealth fields. 6 massive warships materialized in the void like avenging angels, their hulls gleaming with armor that seemed to drink in starlight and reflect it back as pure energy. At the center of the formation, the HFS Incheon revealed herself in all her deadly glory. She was larger than any ship in the Vorthan fleet, her weapons already glowing with power that made the very space around her ripple and bend. Ancient but upgraded, she carried scars from 100 battles and the quiet confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. Admiral Nam Tae-hyung stood on the bridge of the Incheon, his gray hair and weathered face showing the marks of a lifetime spent defending humanity's frontier. Around him, his crew worked with the smooth efficiency of veterans who had served together for decades. These were not young recruits or fresh academy graduates. These were the old guard, the ones who had volunteered for missions that others called impossible. "Communications," the Admiral said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had faced death so many times it had become an old friend. "Open a channel to the Vorthan fleet." The main screen filled with the surprised face of War Leader Groth, the alien. Commander's red eyes showed confusion and growing fear as he realized that his perfect trap had become something very different. "Vorthan fleet," Admiral Nam said with the kind of quiet politeness that made smart enemies very nervous. "This is Admiral Nam Tae-hyung of the Human Federation Navy. You are attacking Federation citizens and our allies. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system or face the consequences." Groth recovered from his shock and sneered at the human admiral. "You are outnumbered 2-1, human. Your pathetic ships cannot stand against the might of the Vorthan Empire. Surrender now, and I will grant you a quick death." Admiral Nam smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. War Leader Groth, you seem to be under several misconceptions. First, you assume that numbers matter more than skill. Second, you believe these are ordinary Federation ships. And third, you think we came here to negotiate. Down on the planet, Captain Hyun and his strike team watched through cracks in the tunnel ceiling as the space battle began. The Vorthon ships opened fire first, sending waves of plasma energy toward the human fleet. But something impossible happened. The human ships seemed to know exactly where each shot would be fired, moving out of the way before the weapons even discharged. How are they doing that? Dr. Kim whispered in amazement as he watched a massive Vorthon destroyer's entire barrage miss the Incheon by mere meters. The answer came when the human ships began their counterattack. The Incheon's main guns fired once, and a Vorthon heavy cruiser simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely gone as if it had never been there at all. Commander Jiwon, monitoring the battle from her communication bunker, captured data streams from both fleets. What she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about human military technology. The human ships are using some kind of prediction system, she reported to Captain Hyun. They're calculating Vorthon movement several seconds. Before they happen, the space battle became a systematic demonstration of superior technology and training. Human ships moved like dancers, each vessel supporting the others in patterns that seemed choreographed but were actually the result of perfect coordination. Their weapons fired with mathematical precision, each shot placed exactly where it would do the most damage. War Leader Groth watched his fleet being dismantled piece by piece and felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Fear. Real, bone-deep terror as he realized that his hunters had become the hunted. All ships, concentrate fire on the lead human vessel, he ordered desperately. If we can destroy their flagship, the others will retreat. 8 Vorthon ships turned their combined firepower on the Incheon. Energy beams that could melt mountains converged on the human flagship in a display that lit up the entire system. For a moment, the human ship disappeared in a ball of plasma and destruction. Then the light faded, and the Incheon emerged completely unharmed. Her shields hadn't even flickered. Admiral Nam's voice came across the communication channel with deadly calm. War Leader Groth, you just made a very serious mistake. My ship has been through the Rigel campaign, the Centauri Rebellion, and the Border Wars. A few plasma bolts from second-rate pirates aren't going to scratch her paint. The human counterattack was swift and brutal. The Incheon's escort ships spread out in attack formation, their weapon systems charging with energy that made space itself seem to bend around them. When they fired, Vorthon ships died quickly and cleanly, their hulls pierced by beams that cut through armor like paper. Down on the planet, the Vorthon ground forces began to panic as they watched their fleet being destroyed above them. Some tried to retreat to their landing ships while others attempted to set up defensive positions among the colony buildings. Captain Hyun saw his opportunity. All teams, the enemy is confused and scattered. Hit them now while they're not coordinating their defense. The human and Altarian resistance fighters emerged from their tunnels and struck at Vorthon positions throughout the colony. What had been a hopeless last stand suddenly became a coordinated uprising as the defenders fought with renewed hope and fury. Yun Sola abandoned her defensive battery and led a team of engineers in a direct assault on a Vorthon command post. Her technical knowledge of the colony's systems allowed her to turn mining equipment into improvised weapons that caught the alien soldiers completely off guard. In space, the battle was reaching its conclusion. Half the Vorthon fleet had been destroyed, and the remainder were trying desperately to escape the system. But the human ships moved to block their retreat, surrounding them with the same precision they had shown in attack. Admiral Nam opened communications one final time. War Leader Groth, your fleet is defeated and your ground forces are surrounded. I am prepared to accept your surrender, but only if you order an immediate ceasefire and withdraw all troops from the planet. Groth's image on the screen showed a broken commander facing the end of his career, and possibly his life. You cannot be Federation military. No human ships have this kind of power. You're partially correct, Admiral Nam replied. We're not standard Federation military. We're something much older and much more dangerous. We're the volunteers who come when no one else can. We're the ones who answer the calls that others ignore. The Vorthon war leader looked around his ruined bridge and made the only choice that might save what remained of his fleet. I surrender. All Vorthan forces cease fire and prepare for withdrawal. As the last of the Vorthan ships limped away into hyperspace, Admiral Nam turned to his navigation officer. Set course for the planet. Let's go collect our people. Captain Hune emerged from the tunnels to see human ships descending through the atmosphere. They moved with the same impossible grace they had shown in battle, landing in the colony's central plaza with barely a whisper of displaced air. When the landing ramps opened, Admiral Nam was the first to step onto the surface of Kepler 442b. He walked directly to Captain Hyun and offered a crisp military salute. "Captain," the Admiral said, "I believe you called for assistance." For the first time in 3 days, Captain Lee Hyun allowed himself to smile. The victory celebration was unlike anything the colony had ever seen. Humans and Altarians emerged from the underground bunkers to find their world transformed. Where Vorthan ships had once darkened the sky, human vessels now provided protective cover. The sounds of battle had been replaced by the gentle hum of medical shuttles and supply transports. Admiral Nam Tae-hyung walked through the colony alongside Captain Lee Hyun, surveying the damage and organizing relief efforts. Medical teams from the human ships worked alongside Dr. Kim Min-ho to treat wounded civilians, while engineering crews helped Yoon Sola restore power to damaged systems. "Admiral," Captain Hyun said as they passed a group of Altarian children playing with human soldiers, "I have to ask, how did you get here so fast? Even at maximum FTL speed, you should have been weeks away when we sent our distress calls." Admiral Nam smiled and gestured toward the Incheon, which sat in the colony's main plaza like a protective mountain of metal and energy. "Captain, that's a story that begins with an old emergency network that most people forgot existed, and ends with some very dedicated people making some very dangerous choices." Commander Park Ji-won joined them, her communication equipment finally restored to full function. "Sir, I've been analyzing the transmission logs. Our distress calls were picked up by something called the Deep Range Emergency Network. I've never heard of it." "Most people haven't," the Admiral replied. "It was established during the early colonial period for situations exactly like this one. Remote settlements that might need help faster than regular channels could provide. The network connects directly to certain classified facilities." Dr. Kim approached the group, his medical scanner showing readings from both human and Altarian patients. "Admiral, if you don't mind me asking, what kind of facility keeps ships like yours in reserve? I've never seen technology like what you used in that battle." Admiral Nam paused in his inspection of a damaged building and looked at the 3 officers who had held the colony together during its darkest hours. "The HFS Incheon and her sister ships are part of something called the Volunteer Fleet. Officially, we don't exist. Unofficially, we're what happens when veteran officers refuse to let bureaucracy prevent them from doing their jobs." Yoon Sola emerged from a power distribution center, her tools covered in dust but her expression satisfied. "Admiral, I've got main power restored to 70% of the colony. Your engineering teams are amazing. They've been showing me modifications that will make our systems twice as efficient." "Keep working with them," Admiral Nam said. "When we leave, this colony will have defenses that will make any potential attacker think twice before starting trouble." As the day progressed, the full story of the rescue began to emerge. Commander Ji-won's desperate broadcast had indeed reached human space, but through an emergency network that bypassed normal military channels. The signal had gone directly to a research facility where several decommissioned ships were being secretly upgraded with experimental technology Admiral Nam had been overseeing the project when the distress call arrived. Without waiting for official authorization, he had gathered volunteers from among the facility's staff and launched an immediate rescue mission. "We pushed our ships beyond their safe operational limits," he explained to Captain Hyun as they watched medical teams evacuate the last of the wounded. "The quantum prediction systems we used in the battle aren't fully tested. Every time we activated them, we risked permanent brain damage to our crews." "But you came anyway," Hyun said with deep respect. "Of course we came," Admiral Nam replied simply. "The Federation doesn't abandon its people, ever." Dr. Kim had been interviewing both human and Altarian survivors, documenting their experiences during the siege. "Admiral, the psychological impact of your arrival went far beyond simple military rescue. You proved something important to the Altarians about human character." Veltar, the Altarian colonial leader, approached the group with several of her advisors. Her telepathic voice carried deep gratitude mixed with newfound respect. Admiral Nam, Captain Hyun, you have shown my people what true alliance means. We believed we were abandoned, but you proved that humans keep their promises even when it seems impossible. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Admiral Nam replied. But it's less dangerous when people stand together. Your people and ours make each other stronger. As evening approached, the rescued colonists gathered in the central plaza for a ceremony that had been planned by both humans and Altarians. Children from both species had prepared songs and presentations to thank their rescuers. Little Star, the young Altarian girl who had asked Captain Yoon about the bad ships, presented Admiral Nam with a drawing she had made. It showed human and Altarian figures standing together under a protective shield of light. Thank you for making the bad ships go away, she said in her small voice. Admiral Nam knelt down to her level and accepted the drawing with ceremony appropriate for a state document. Little Star, it was our honor to help. And I promise you, if bad ships ever come back, we'll be here to stop them. The formal treaty signing took place that evening aboard the Incheon. Beltar and her council met with Admiral Nam and the Federation representatives who had arrived on the other ships. The document they signed established permanent mutual defense agreements and authorized the construction of a Federation naval base in the system. Captain Hyun found himself appointed as the new base commander, with responsibility for coordinating defense operations throughout the sector. Commander Jiwon would oversee communication networks that connected to the deep-range emergency system. Dr. Kim was assigned to establish a joint research facility, while Yoon Sola would design the engineering systems for the new base. Will the Vorthons come back? Asked Veltan, the young miner who had fought alongside the human strike team. They might try, Admiral Nam admitted. But they'll find us ready for them. And word will spread about what happened here. Other species will know that attacking Federation colonies and their allies comes with serious consequences. As the celebration continued into the night, Admiral Nam stood with Captain Hyun on the Incheon's observation deck, looking down at the colony that had become a symbol of something larger than military victory. Captain, the Admiral said, what you and your people did here was remarkable. You held the line when everything seemed hopeless. You proved that courage isn't about winning impossible fights. It's about standing up for what's right, even when you know you might lose. We had good teachers, Hyun replied, thinking of the Altarians who had chosen to fight alongside them, despite having no military training, and we had something worth fighting for. Below them, the colony sparkled with lights that had been restored by joint human and Altarian work crews. Children of both species played together in the plaza, while their parents shared meals and stories. Engineers discussed plans for expansion and improvement. Medical staff compared techniques for treating different species. This is what we're really defending, Admiral Nam observed. Not just territory or resources, but the idea that different peoples can choose to work together. That friendship and cooperation are stronger than fear and conquest. Commander Jiwon's voice came over the communication system. Admiral, we're receiving messages from all over human space. News of the rescue has spread faster than our official reports. There are requests from a dozen colonies asking for similar defense agreements. Then we'll be busy, Admiral Nam said with satisfaction. The volunteer fleet just got a lot more official support. As the night deepened, the human ships remained in orbit as a visible reminder that the cavalry had arrived and would not be leaving. The age of isolation for frontier colonies was ending. The galaxy had been reminded that humanity took care of its own. And in the depths of space, other species began to recalculate their plans for expansion and conquest. The humans had sent a message that would echo across the stars for generations to come. No one gets left behind. Ever. The colony slept peacefully for the first time in days, protected by friends who had traveled across the galaxy to prove that some promises are too important to break.